Hey, glad you could join me for the Sunday school lesson from April 16th at Lexington Baptist Church Chapel. This lesson is Moses' instructions to the children of Israel for how they are to keep and observe the Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread since they would be leaving Egypt. And so this is a kind of a wrap up of what happened in the Exodus. So let's get into it. Okay, this is picking up at verse 34 of chapter 12, after the 10 plagues, after the death of the firstborn, except for those whose homes were marked with the blood of the Lamb, which was Passover. So Passovers happened, and Pharaoh said, Go, leave Egypt. And we pick it up in the story that says, And the people took their dough before it was leavened, their kneading troughs being bound up in their clothes upon their shoulders. This is so interesting because this is the only reason that the Jews without Jesus or Yahusha have for why there is a feast of unleavened bread. You could ask any Jew normally today and say, why do you have the feast of unleavened bread? They'd say, well, because when they came out of Egypt, they didn't have time to let their bread rise. And it says in verse 39 down here, and they baked unleavened cakes of the dough which they brought forth out of Egypt, for it was not leavened. Why? Because they were thrust out of Egypt and could not tarry, couldn't wait. Neither had they prepared themselves any food. So it's just recorded that's what they did, but it seems such a minuscule, mundane fact. Who cares whether they had wheat bread or white bread or flat bread or fluffy bread? It's so fascinating that Yah established this seemingly insignificant instruction as preparation for Jesus, Yahusha, comparing himself to unleavened bread 1,500 years later at the Last Supper with his disciples. Leaven represents sin, and he was unleavened without sin. This next verse says, And the children of Israel did according to the word of Moses, and they borrowed of the Egyptians jewels of silver and jewels of gold and raiment. This is how they plundered the Egyptians when they left. And why were they able to do all this? It says, And the Lord gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, so that they lent unto them such things as they required. Interesting that the Hebrew people were favored by the Egyptians. It was the Egyptian government under Pharaoh, with all his pride and arrogance, that refused to let them go, and which had enslaved them. And so this is how they spoiled the Egyptians. And the children of Israel journeyed from Ramesses to Succoth, about 600,000 on foot, that were men besides children. Uh, this kind of answers the question, well, how many came out of Egypt in this Exodus? Well, there was at least 600,000 men, and then count women and children. Well, there had to be at the very, very least double 600,000. So that's 1.25 million. Most people estimate that it could have been 2 million to 3 million that came out. What a huge mass exodus from Egypt. Plus, part of that number then was a mixed multitude that went with them. What does that mean? A mixed multitude. That means a lot of the Egyptians, many Egyptians went with them and said, We believe your God is the right God. We've seen what he's done and how he's protected you. Can we go with you? And they were allowed to. Also, I look at this and see that the mixed multitude went up with them, and it says flocks, herds, and much cattle. You know, God is all about life and loves every living creature. Perhaps this phrase, mixed multitude, might include the animals as well. And here's where it says about them baking the unleavened bread. And now the sojourning of the children of Israel who dwelt in Egypt was 430 years. Well, we've got to explain that a little bit, because through English translation and interpretations, this is almost reads like, well, they were in Egypt for 430 years. No, actually, 430 years is the time from Abraham's calling to the deliverance from Egypt. When Abraham was called out from Ur of the Chaldees, he had Isaac. Isaac had Jacob. Jacob had 12 sons. One of them was sold into slavery into Egypt. So there's a lot of years that go by before the children of Israel even migrate into Egypt. And they were probably in Egypt. Well, I think we know from non canonical writings and other sources that they were in Egypt 215 years. When they first came, they were not slaves, they were welcomed and given the best land because they were Joseph's kin. But then that Pharaoh died, and another Pharaoh came, and perhaps another, we're not sure. But by the time Moses was born, um, the Hebrew children were, you know, the babies were all being thrown into the river because the government was so afraid that the Hebrews were getting too many and outnumbering them if they ever went to war. How long was it before they were enslaved? Not totally sure. They could have been slaves anywhere of 75 to 100 years, I suppose. But this is a mass exodus of several million that came out of Egypt. And it came to pass at the end of the 430 years, even the self same day it came to pass. This is the very day that Pharaoh said, okay, leave. It's the first day of unleavened bread. It's Wednesday. The Passover was Tuesday night on the 14th of the first month. That all the hosts of the Lord went out from the land of Egypt. It is a night to be much observed unto the Lord for bringing them out from the land of Egypt. This is that night of the Lord to be observed of all the children of Israel in their generations. It's talking about Passover. And the Lord said unto Moses and Aaron, this is the ordinance of Passover. Gave it a name. There shall no stranger eat thereof. And gives a stipulation about who could participate in the Passover. But every man's servant that is bought for money, when thou hast circumcised him, then shall he eat thereof. A foreigner and a hired servant shall not eat thereof. See, in order to participate with the Hebrew children observing the feast of Passover, you need to be grafted in to the people of the covenant. What was the sign of the covenant? Circumcision was. And so that's why it was established that when a stranger shall sojourn with thee, like an Egyptian, and will keep the Passover to the Lord, let all his males be circumcised. He's got to identify with the people of the covenant. And then let him come near and keep it, and he shall be as one that is born in the land. For no uncircumcised person shall eat thereof. One law shall be to him that is homebound, and unto the stranger that sojourns among you. Thus did all the children of Israel, as the Lord commanded Moses and Aaron. So did they. And it came to pass the selfsame day that the Lord did bring the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt by their armies. We see then, if we're to keep the Passover, well, does that mean that all the men must be circumcised today? Well, the Bible does speak about so often we talk about moving from the physical to the spiritual. There is a physical sacrifice of animals, but then there's the spiritual aspect when Jesus became the last physical sacrifice. And from now on, there's a spiritual sacrifice of yourself, putting yourself on the altar, dying to self, and identifying with the sacrifice of the blood of Jesus Christ upon the doorpost of your heart. The Bible speaks about a circumcision of the heart that must take place. And I believe that that's what's going on here. Now, if someone chooses to both physically and spiritually, become circumcised in order to identify fully with the children of Israel, then that is that person's halakha and belief. And I have no problem with that whatsoever. And the Lord spake to Moses, saying, sanctify unto me all the firstborn, whatsoever openeth the womb among the children of Israel, both of man and of beast. It is mine. There's something about the firstborn that the Father has sanctified unto himself. And Moses said to the people, remember this day in which you came out from Egypt, out of the house of bondage, for by strength of hand Yahweh brought you out from this place. There shall no unleavened bread be eaten. This is the day, this day came ye out in the month of Abib. Abib means barley, and actually this is the only Hebrew month that has a Hebrew name. All the rest of the months in the Hebrew calendar are just the second month, third month, fourth month. They're numbered. These months, names like Nisan and some of these, they're from pagan gods, and they came out of the Babylonian captivity. So you might hear on a Hebrew calendar other names other than the second month, third month, fourth month. And it shall be when Yahweh shall bring thee into the land of the Canaanites and the Hittites and the Amorites and the Hivites and all these people, the land flowing with milk and honey, that you're going to keep this service, this Passover, this feast of unleavened bread in this month, in the month of Abib, which is the first month. And he gives these instructions: 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread, and in the seventh day shall be a feast to Yahweh. Unleavened bread shall be eaten 7 days, and there shall no leavened bread be seen with thee. Neither shall there be leaven seen with thee in all thy quarters. And thou shalt show thy son in that day, saying, This is done. Why? Because of that which Yahweh did unto me when I came forth from Egypt. This is so important. This is establishment of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And why 7 days? So many things about sevens. 7 days in a week. 6 days God created. Seventh day he rested. There have been 6,000 years of biblical history. There will be a 7,000th millennial kingdom on earth. And naturally, this ties in with the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And on the seventh day, there would be a holy convocation. And that's what is going on even today. And we who believe that we are the children of Israel, as we're grafted in, we try to keep these feasts and observe these. And it, meaning the Passover, shall be for a sign unto thee upon thine hand. You know, like a wedding ring is a sign on your hand that you're married. Well, the keeping of the Passover is instructed to be, that's a sign. What does it indicate? That you're part of the covenant. And as for a memorial between thine eyes, that's at the center of your vision, that the Lord's law may be in your mouth. His Torah is to be constantly on the tip of your tongue, for with a strong hand hath the Lord brought thee out of Egypt. This thing about the hand and this between your eyes, this is so connected, so similar to the Shema, Deuteronomy 6, 4 through 9, where it says the Torah, these words, shall be bound upon your hand and kept between as frontlets between your eyes. And so that's where this is connected to. The Father wants the Torah and the sign of the Passover to be readily helping us with what we do and what we see, what we think about, and what we speak about on the tip of our tongue. I've included here, this is the Hebrew word for sign, and it's pronounced ot, aleph, vav, tav. This is how it looks in modern Hebrew, and it's just pronounced ot. Here it is in ancient Paleo Hebrew. We've talked about that a lot. It's a picture language. The aleph was originally a picture of an ox head. The vav, it has remained pretty much the same, and it's a picture of a tent peg or a nail. The tav looks quite different from the ancient tav. It was just a mark. It was like two strokes, like X marks the spot, except very often in Paleo, it was written, looks very similar to a cross, which is amazing. And so the Paleo, you can see the ox, the leader, the strong one, nailed to the cross. That is the sign. So when you're looking for Jesus in the Old Testament, you see things like this all throughout. He is the sign of the covenant. Passover is the sign of the covenant. He is embodied in the sign. It's amazing. Thou shalt therefore keep this ordinance in its season. That means, in this season, it's in the spring, it's in the first month, from year to year, just once a year. And it shall be when Yahweh shall bring you into the land of the Canaanites, and he sware unto thee and to thy fathers and shall give thee, that thou shalt set apart unto the Lord all that openeth the matrix. That means the firstborn. Every firstling that cometh of a beast which thou hast, even the firstborn of your animals. The males shall be Yahweh's. But it says here, interesting verse, and every firstborn of a donkey, thou shalt redeem with a lamb. And if thou wilt not redeem it, then thou shalt break his neck. That sounds odd. And all the firstborn of man among thy children shalt thou redeem. So all the firstborn belong to the Father, but they are all to be redeemed. Now, this is fascinating. The only way to understand this is how it relates to Jesus and the cross. This is a perfect description of what Messiah did on the cross. Because if you are not redeemed by the blood of the Lamb, you will perish. If this donkey is not redeemed by the blood of the Lamb, it's going to die. It's setting up an illustration here. And all the firstborn of man among thy children shalt thou redeem. The Father's in the redemption business of redeeming us from having our souls sold to the devil by our sin inheritance from Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve sold our souls to the devil, so to speak. And it shall be when thy son asketh thee in time to come, and your children, your grandchildren, great grandchildren, when they say, what is this Passover and this feast? What's this all about? It says, thou shalt say unto him, by strength of hand, Yahweh brought us out from Egypt, from the house of bondage. Now, that's just a simple answer. The more we study the Bible, the more questions come up, the more complicated the details, the things that we don't know, but yet we're drawn back to the simplicity. This is what it's all about. By strength of the Father's hand, he brought us out of bondage. That's what it's all about. And you and I can be freed from the bondage of sin. This, what went physically, what our ancestors went through physically, can happen spiritually to us. But in this lesson today, I'm going to end up talking about how this physical exodus, there's going to be a second greater exodus. You don't hear about that a lot. It's prophesied, and we're going to explore that a little bit. And it came to pass when Pharaoh would hardly let us go that the Lord slew all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both the firstborn of the man and the firstborn of the beast. Therefore I sacrificed to Yahweh all that opens the matrix, being males, but all the firstborn of my children I redeem. He is the Redeemer. And it shall be for a token upon thine hand and for frontlets between thine eyes. There it is again. That's the Shema. In the Shema, it says, you shall bind them, what? The Torah, his words, as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. This is what this means for us, that the Torah should be on our hand, guiding what we do, and it should be as frontlets between our eyes, monitoring, guiding, controlling what goes in our brains and comes out of our mouths. Now I'm going to get into this section I was telling you about, the prophecies of a second greater exodus. And I'm starting off with this verse out of Jeremiah prophecy, but because it mentions Passover. In Jeremiah 31:8, the prophet says, and this is in all English Bibles, see, I will bring them from the land of the north and gather them from the ends of the earth. He's talking about those, the remnant that's been scattered all over the world. There's prophecy that they're going to be regathered to the land. But I point this out in Jeremiah. It's actually in the Septuagint, which is the Greek version of the Hebrew Old Testament. And so the chapters and verses get a little bit off skewed. It's Jeremiah 38:8. It's the same verse, though. Behold, I'm bringing them from the north and will gather them from the farthest part of the earth. But it adds this, at the feast of Passover, Pesach. That's interesting. That gives us an idea when the next greater exodus is going to be. It's going to happen pretty near an anniversary of the first exodus. So this has not fully happened yet. I want to show you a couple things that haven't happened and some things that are prophesied to happen. This hasn't happened yet. When Jesus said, this is how you're to pray, thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Is God's will being done on earth as it is in heaven? No. But that's what we're praying, that his kingdom will come. When is his kingdom going to come on earth? The Bible teaches about 1,000-year millennial reign, a physical reigning of his kingdom on earth. But this has happened. In Mark, Jesus said, the time is fulfilled. The kingdom of God is at hand. Repent ye and believe the gospel. So on the one hand, Yahusha said the kingdom of God is here because he was here. And if you're in him, you're in his kingdom. But it's not fully realized on earth. That is something that we're to pray will come as it is in heaven. This has not fully happened. Leviticus, but I've told you that you will inherit their land, speaking of the promised land, since I will give it to you as an inheritance, a land flowing with milk and honey. I am Yahweh, your Elohim, who has set you apart, made you holy, set you apart from the peoples. This hasn't happened. Now, this came close to happening when they crossed the Jordan after being in the wilderness 40 years, and they fought the Battle of Jericho and began inheriting the land and establishing Jerusalem. But then what happened? The children of Israel began following false gods. They divided the kingdom. They were taken over by the Assyrians, by the Babylonians. The kingdom was divided. The 10 tribes were lost. And so this land has been sort of disinherited from what they had up until 1948, in our lifetimes just about, when Israel became a nation again, and the Jewish people are returning to the land, making what they call aliyah. When you make aliyah, you're returning to the land. This has happened. On that very day, Yahweh brought the people of Israel out of the land of Egypt like an army. That's history. That's a fact. That happened. But what is this about it happening again? This has not fully happened yet. The scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until what? He to whom it belongs, which is Jesus, shall come, and the obedience of the nations shall be his. Right now, is the obedience of the nations belonging to the Father? No, the nations are being very disobedient. Judgment is coming. That has not fully happened yet. But this has happened. Deuteronomy 4:27. Yahweh shall scatter you among the nations, and you shall be left few in number among the heathen, whither Yahweh shall lead you. From where Yahweh will lead you. He's going to lead you from being scattered out among the heathen. This is a prophecy that has happened. The children of Israel are now scattered all around the world. A second greater exodus has been prophesied. Here are some verses I want to show you from 3 of the prophets that speak. The first one, well, this is out of Deuteronomy from Moses. Then the Lord your God will restore your fortunes and have compassion on you. This is Deuteronomy 30. This is where Moses is making his speech. He cannot go into the promised land with the children of Israel, and he's kind of giving them his farewell address, and he's making a prophecy over them that God is going to restore their fortunes and have compassion on them and gather them again from all the nations where he scattered you. Well, when Moses said this, they weren't scattered out all over the nations. They were crossing over the Jordan, about to take the promised land. Moses was prophesying that they're going to be scattered. Here's the prophet Jeremiah. He says, however, the days are coming, declares the Lord, when it will no longer be said, as surely as the Lord lives, who brought the Israelites up out of Egypt, the first Exodus, But it will be said, as surely as the Lord lives, who brought the Israelites out of the land of the north and out of the countries where he had banished them. That's something totally different that hasn't fully happened yet at all. We've seen a beginning of a regathering of the children of Israel back to the land of the Jewish people. But if they're not in the covenant through Yahusha, through Jesus, then they are still outside of the completion of the covenant. But there is a prophecy that they are going to see one day. Every knee will bow and every tongue confess that Yahusha is Lord of all. It says, for I'll restore them to the land I gave their ancestors. Our ancestors were given the land. They relinquished it. They lost it. They lost it. They allowed themselves. They allowed themselves to be overrun by the enemy, and they're scattered out all over. You know, there are 15 million Jewish people in the world today that we know of DNA Jewish. 6 million of them are right now in the land of Israel. 6 million of them are in America. That leaves just 2 or 3 million scattered around. So the people of the Israelite Hebrews, that's why there's such a strong connection between the United States and Israel. Half of the children of Israel are in America. But what about these Gentiles, you and me, that have been grafted in and are no longer Gentiles? We're now Israelites. We are a vast number. We're in the millions. And we have probably the fullness of the time of the fullness of the Gentiles has just about come to completion. That's why I believe that the time is drawing near that the second coming is going to happen. The Messiah is going to come again. And all of the people of the covenant are going to be drawn back to the land. And those Jewish people that did not recognize their Messiah, they're going to have a chance to recognize him and receive him as their Messiah. But the Bible speaks about, there's going to be great weeping on their part when they realize the one whom they pierced, that they rejected their Messiah through all these 2,000 years. Jeremiah 23, 7 and 8. He repeats this in a different chapter. So then the days are coming. The people no longer say, surely as the Lord lives, who brought the Israelites out of Egypt. They're going to say, surely as the Lord lives, who brought the descendants of Israel out of the land of the north and out of the country where he had banished them. Then they will live in their own. Jeremiah 31, I will bring them from the land of the north and gather them from the ends of the earth. Among them will be the blind and the lame, expectant mothers, and women in labor. This is very similar to the first Exodus. When they came out of Egypt, you know, there were expectant mothers. There were some that were blind and lame. God gave them strength to make the journey. But a great throng will return. They will come with weeping. So it's going to be difficult. Maybe some of that weeping are those that are weeping because they had rejected their Jews who realized they had rejected their own Messiah. They will pray as I bring them back. But he gives good news here. I will lead them beside streams of water on a level path where they will not stumble. Well, that sounds good. Because I am Israel's father and Ephraim is my firstborn son. Jeremiah 31, 8. Behold, I bring them from the north, and I will gather them from the ends of the earth to the feast of the Passover. And here, see, this is when I read earlier. It's in the Septuagint. And the people shall beget a great multitude, and they shall return. Jeremiah 32, I will surely gather them from all the lands where I banished them. In my furious anger and great wrath, I will bring them back to this place, the Holy Land, and let them live in safety. Now let's go to the prophet Ezekiel. Therefore say, thus says Yahweh Elohim, though I remove them far off among the nations, and though I scatter them among the countries, yet I have been a sanctuary to them for a while in the countries where they have gone. Isn't that true? He's been a sanctuary to us while we've been in this country, to where we have been scattered. Therefore say, thus saith Yahweh Elohim, I will gather you from the peoples and assemble you out of the countries where you have been scattered, and I will give you the land of Israel. Ezekiel again, I will bring you out from the peoples and gather you out of the countries where you've been scattered with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm with wrath poured out. And I will bring you into the wilderness of the peoples, and there I will enter into judgment with you face to face. Now, this says being brought back where we've been scattered and with wrath poured out. This makes it sound like perhaps during the tribulation, when the sealed judgments, the bowl judgments, the trumpets, when God's wrath is poured out, we're going to be being gathered at that time. But he's going to protect us. It's kind of like Noah's Ark. The flood is still raging. Death is all around. But they're in the ark and they're protected. Ezekiel says, and you shall know that I am Yahweh when I bring you into the land of Israel, the country that I swore to give to your fathers. Again in Ezekiel, thus says Yahweh Elohim, when I gather the house of Israel from the people among whom they are scattered, and manifest my holiness in them in the sight of the nations. The other nations are going to see this. Then they shall dwell in their own land that I gave to my servant Jacob. I will bring them out from the peoples and gather them from the countries, and I will bring them into their own land. Isaiah the prophet says, in that day Yahweh will extend his hand yet a second time. What was the first time? That was coming out of Egypt. The second time is yet to come, when he recovers the remnant that remains of his people from all these places. Assyria, Egypt. Assyria represents the north. Egypt, the west. Pathos, Cush, Elam, Shinar, from Hamath, from the coastlands of the sea. This is all over the world. And again in Isaiah, there will be a highway from Assyria for the remnant that remains of his people, as there was for Israel when they came up from the land of Egypt. The Father made a highway through the Red Sea for them to be delivered. He's going to do it again. It's prophesied. This hasn't happened. You don't hear a lot of sermons preached on this. Do we believe that this is scripture? That these prophets, Ezekiel, Isaiah, Jeremiah, that what they speak is the word of God and it will come to pass.
God will fulfill your heart's desire, take you to the place you want to go. Keep dreaming of the land of your history, and you're walking the streets before you know. On wings of eagles they took to the sky, not sure how this magic carpet would fly. Then cries of joy at the first shalom, 50,000 Yemenites coming home. My heart is dancing in Jerusalem. 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 Next came Ezra and Nehemiah, redeeming our brothers of Babylon. 2,000 years in the shook of Baghdad, soon every last soul would come along. Though it seemed impossible to achieve, Morocco's Jews were the next to leave. They're a pillar of the Temple of Solomon. Hear the sound of French ringing through Zion. My heart is dancing in Jerusalem. 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 Soon we'll be dancing in Jerusalem. The whole world dancing in Jerusalem. בירושלים עירך ברחמים תשוב ותשכון בתוכה כאשר דיברת. to Israel and watched in awe from the tribe of Dan in Ethiopia. Slipping through the border of the Sudan, they crossed the desert to reach their land. We marched for the rights of refused Nikim, to help them realize their Aliyah dream. After 70 years of a living hell, see the celebration when that curtain fell. My heart is dancing in Jerusalem. My